All right, let's dive into the world of Swami Vivekananda. You might know him as like the guy who brought Vedanta philosophy and Hinduism to the West. But there's so much more to him. Picture this. It's the late 1800s, and this like dynamic Indian monk is on stage at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, just captivating everyone with his wisdom and his ideas. That's Vivekananda. He could take these super complex spiritual ideas and make them make sense to like everyone.
Yeah, it's amazing how he wasn't just like reciting old scriptures. He presented it as like a way of life, a whole philosophy that people from all different backgrounds could connect with. But we're going to be looking at excerpts from his complete works. It's like this massive collection of all his lectures, writings, and letters.
So basically, like our mission for this deep dive is to figure out what Vivekananda was all about. His ideas about spirituality, about finding your true self, and this idea that all religions are like connected somehow.
Yeah, and fair warning, his ideas can be pretty insightful, but also sometimes a bit controversial. He really pushed people to question things, like blind faith. He wanted people to experience religion directly.
Okay, so let's start with the foundation of his philosophy. Vedanta. Now, I know philosophy can sound kind of intimidating, but just stick with me for a minute. Think of Vedanta as this like a huge ancient tree, like the tree of Indian philosophy, and all the branches are different interpretations.
Right. Vivekananda was really into this one branch called Advaita Vedanta. And the main takeaway from Advaita Vedanta is that we're all fundamentally one with the divine. You, me, everyone. Everything is connected to like a single source. And that feeling we have of being separate, that's just an illusion. It's called Maya, something we have to overcome.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But if we're all one, why is there so much diversity and conflict in the world?
Well, he loved to use analogies. One of his favorites was the sun and its reflections. Like you see all these unique reflections in drops of water,
Yeah.
right? But it's all just the same sunlight. We're like those reflections. We
Yeah.
seem separate, but we're all part of the same source.
So we're all like little sparks of the divine. But if that's true, then why do we feel so limited? Like, why do we experience fear, weakness, suffering, all that stuff?
Right? That's where Maya comes in. Vivekananda said all those limitations come from that illusion of separation. He believed the key to freedom was realizing our true nature as part of that like all-encompassing unity.
So freedom from all the things that hold us back sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, and he said it so well. I am free and was free and always will be free.
Whoa. That's quite a statement. But here's where I get a little confused. If this ultimate reality is impersonal, then how does the idea of a personal God fit in? A lot of people find comfort in praying to a specific deity.
Yeah, and Vivekananda recognized that. He said our minds often need that personal connection, that like figure to focus on. He saw figures like Krishna and Buddha as representing a higher idea of the divine. It's like we're trying to understand something bigger than our minds can handle. So we use an image or a story to help us connect.
So it's like training wheels for our spiritual understanding.
Exactly. And he didn't dismiss devotion at all. He often used the story of the Gopis' love for Krishna. This like pure, selfless love that went beyond the usual ideas of God. He saw it as an example of bhakti yoga, the path of devotion.
It seems like he was pretty open to different approaches to spirituality. What about different religions?
He believed in this underlying harmony between all religions. He famously said, whom they call Indra, Mitra, Varuna, that which exists is one. Sages call it by various names. He saw different religions as different paths, all leading to the same summit.
Yeah, he was all about respecting everyone's individual path. Didn't he say something like, welcome, my brother, I'm going to help you, but you must allow me to follow my way too?
He did. He called this personalized path to God Ishta. But he was also adamant that spirituality had to be practical, something you live, not just a bunch of ideas.
Okay, so how did he see that playing out in everyday life?
Well, he was a huge advocate for education and social reform. He believed in uplifting everyone, both individuals and society as a whole. He even criticized some aspects of traditional Hinduism, like the overemphasis on ritual purity. He said something like, your religion seems nowadays to be confined to the cooking pot alone. He wanted people to focus on the essence of spirituality, not just the rituals.
So not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. But how did he suggest people actually find their ishta, their own personal path?
He outlined 3 main paths to self-realization: karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga. Karma yoga is the path of selfless action. Bhakti yoga is the path of devotion. And jnana yoga is the path of knowledge. Each path uses different approaches, but all lead to the same goal: realizing your true self.
So let me see if I've got this right. We're all part of this divine oneness, but we're tricked into feeling separate and limited by Maya. To break free, we need to realize our true selves. And there are different paths we can take to get there. Did I get it?
You got it. And he was a big believer in applying these teachings to real-world issues. He thought education was crucial, especially for those who are marginalized.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to call out injustice. Didn't he say something pretty strong about people who ignore the suffering of others?
He did. He said, "So long as the millions live in hunger and ignorance, I hold every man a traitor who, having been educated at their expense, pays not the least heed to them." He really believed that our spiritual growth should lead to real action, to working towards a better world for everyone.
That's a powerful message. So he was all about connecting spirituality with social change. Now that's something I can get behind.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another interesting aspect of his teachings, his stance against superstition and blind faith. He believed in using reason and direct experience when it came to religion. He had this great anecdote about people being afraid to give up the idea of the devil.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Like we'd rather hold on to a familiar enemy than face the unknown, even if that unknown could lead us to freedom.
Exactly. He wanted people to break free from fear-based beliefs and seek truth through experience and reason. You know, it's interesting how Vivekananda really walked this line between respecting tradition and pushing for progress. He wasn't about just blindly following the old ways, but he also recognized there was wisdom in those ancient teachings.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like taking the best of what we've inherited and using it to build a better future. But it still seems kind of tricky. Like, how do you balance reason and direct experience with faith and tradition? It feels like they kind of clash.
That's where his approach gets really interesting. He didn't say to just throw out all tradition, but he did want people to think critically, to really engage with their beliefs, not just accept them passively.
There's no blind faith.
Well, not exactly. Remember, he also saw value in devotion, connecting with the divine through your heart. He knew that sometimes our minds need a personal form to connect with. That's where Ishvara comes in, the personal God. The aspect of the divine that we can relate to and worship.
So it's like a stepping stone. You start with something familiar and relatable, like a personal deity, and then you gradually move towards a deeper understanding of the impersonal absolute.
That's a great way to put it. Vivekananda thought Ishvara was a really helpful concept, especially for people who are new to the path. It's like having a guide when you're exploring a new place. Eventually, you gain the confidence to go off on your own.
That makes sense. But I gotta admit, the idea of the impersonal absolute, the Brahman, it's still kind of mind-boggling to me. How can we even begin to grasp something that's beyond form and definition?
Vivekananda taught that the key is to look inward, explore your own being. Through practices like meditation and self-inquiry, he said, the kingdom of God is within you.
So instead of searching for God out there, we need to look inside ourselves.
Exactly. And he wasn't just talking about some vague, feel-good spirituality. He believed that by going deep within, we could connect with the Atman, our true self, pure consciousness, the eternal essence of our being.
Hold on, back up for a sec. Atman, that's another one of those Sanskrit terms that throws me off. What did he mean by Atman exactly?
Okay, think about it this way. Your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, they're always changing. But there's this awareness that's witnessing it all. An unchanging observer. That's the Atman. It's not your thoughts or your feelings, but the consciousness that's aware of them.
So it's like the silent witness, the part of us that's always there, no matter what's going on in our lives. Is that what he meant by the kingdom of God is within you?
Exactly. The Atman is our connection to the divine. It's like a spark of the Brahman, the ultimate reality, residing right there inside each of us.
Okay, my brain is doing backflips trying to keep up with all of this. Let's go back to something you said earlier about Vivekananda's focus on education and social reform. It sounds like he was way ahead of his time.
Oh, he was. He believed that real spirituality had to connect to the real world. It had to translate into action, working to ease suffering and uplift all of humanity. He was a huge advocate for education, especially for the marginalized and underprivileged.
And you mentioned how he criticized the overemphasis on ritual purity in traditional Hinduism. He was all about making spirituality practical and relevant.
Absolutely. He wanted people to move beyond empty rituals and really connect with the essence of their faith. He thought true religion should empower people and help create a more just and compassionate society. He had this famous quote, "Religion is not for empty stomachs."
So it's not about escaping the world's problems. It's about engaging with them in a way that makes things better.
Exactly. He wasn't about retreating to a monastery to meditate all day. He believed in taking action, serving others, and making a difference.
But how do we reconcile this idea of social action with the concept of the Atman, the unchanging self? It seems like two different worlds, one outward focused, the other inward focused.
Vivekananda saw them as interconnected. He thought by realizing our true nature as the Atman, we could tap into this wellspring of compassion and wisdom, and that would naturally guide our actions in the world. He said the best thermometer to the progress of a nation is the progress of its women.
Wait, what do women have to do with all of this?
He saw how women were treated as a measure of a society's spiritual development. He said that a society that oppresses and marginalizes women could never truly progress spiritually.
That's pretty forward thinking for his time.
He was ahead of his time in many ways. And this connection between personal transformation and social change, that's a thread that runs through all of his teachings. He believed that true spiritual growth should show up in everything we do, our actions, our relationships, our commitment to creating a more just and harmonious world.
So it's not an either thing. It's about bringing our inner and outer worlds together. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around this idea that true freedom comes from realizing our oneness with the Brahman. It sounds kind of paradoxical. How can we be both individuals and part of this ultimate unity at the same time?
That's a question that really gets to the heart of Advaita Vedanta, that non-dualistic philosophy that Vivekananda loved. It's a profound concept, and it can definitely be tricky to understand.
So how do we make sense of individuality and this idea of ultimate oneness?
Think of it like this. You're like a wave on the surface of the ocean. You have your own shape and your own rhythm, but you're still a part of the ocean.
So we're like these individual expressions of the divine, each unique and important, but ultimately part of the same source.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Vivekananda taught that by realizing this truth, connecting with the Atman within, we can access this infinite potential for love, wisdom, and creativity. We're not limited beings, but expressions of the divine.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But what about all the challenges we face in life? The suffering, the setbacks, the injustices. If we're all part of this divine oneness, why is there so much pain and conflict in the world?
That's a question that has puzzled people for ages. And Vivekananda's perspective on it was both wise and compassionate. He didn't shy away from acknowledging the reality of suffering.
So he wasn't just promoting some kind of blissful utopia where everyone's always happy?
Not at all. He knew very well the pain and struggles that people face. But he saw suffering as a consequence of us forgetting who we really are. Our identification with the ego, with that illusion of separateness. He had a great quote, "The world is the great gymnasium where we come to make ourselves strong."
So it's like we're putting ourselves through these challenges to learn and grow.
He believed that by facing those challenges with courage and wisdom, we could actually use them as opportunities to grow spiritually.
It's almost like life is a giant obstacle course, designed to help us wake up to our true nature.
That's a great analogy. Vivekananda saw the path to liberation not as escaping the world, but as engaging with it more deeply. It's about learning to see the divine in everything, even in the midst of suffering.
So instead of trying to avoid pain and difficulty, we need to learn to see them as chances to grow and change.
That's a key point he made. True strength comes not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them head on. With courage, compassion, and understanding our own inner strength, he said, strength is life, weakness is death, expansion is life, contraction is death, love is life, hatred is death.
Wow, those are powerful words. But how do we cultivate that kind of strength and resilience? It seems like we're constantly being told to seek comfort and security, to avoid pain and discomfort at all costs.
That's where Vivekananda's emphasis on practical spirituality comes in. He believed we need to develop practices that help us tap into that inner strength, that Atman within. He was a big fan of meditation, yoga, and selfless service as tools for cultivating resilience, compassion, and a deeper understanding of ourselves.
So it's not enough to just read books and have intellectual discussions. We have to put these teachings into practice in our daily lives.
Exactly. He believed that true spirituality should transform everything. Not just our minds, but our hearts and actions. He said, take up one idea, make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success.
That's a pretty intense approach, but I can see how focusing all your energy and intention on a single goal or idea could lead to incredible results.
Vivekananda really believed in the power of focused intention. He saw it as the key to unlocking our potential and creating lasting change in ourselves and in the world.
Okay, so we've got this idea of realizing our oneness with the Brahman. connecting with the Atman within, and using those insights to guide our actions in the world. But it still seems like a lot to take on. Where do we even begin?
Vivekananda always emphasized that self-realization is a journey, not a destination. It's about taking small steps and making gradual progress, and cultivating a deep sense of self-awareness.
So it's not about achieving instant enlightenment.
Not at all. He saw it as a process of unfolding, gradually shedding the layers of ignorance and illusion that hide our true nature. He said, "All the powers in the universe are already ours. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark."
So it's about removing those obstacles, those limitations we place on ourselves, and recognizing the power and potential that's already there inside us.
Exactly. And he believed that everyone, no matter their background or beliefs, had the capacity for this kind of awakening.
That's a really empowering message. Like he was saying, hey, you don't need to be a monk or a saint to experience this. It's available to everyone.
He truly believed in the universality of spiritual truth. He saw that divine spark in everyone, and he encouraged people to find their own unique path to self-realization. He said, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached."
Arise, awake. I love that. It's like a call to action, an invitation to step into our full potential. But what about those of us who feel stuck, like we're stumbling around in the dark? What advice did he have for dealing with the inevitable challenges and setbacks that come with this journey?
He always emphasized the importance of perseverance, never giving up on seeking truth and self-knowledge.
So no quitting allowed, even when things get tough.
He believed that every challenge, every obstacle, was a chance for growth and learning. He famously said, "In a day when you don't come across any problems, you can be sure that you are traveling in a wrong path."
That's a great way to look at challenges. Instead of roadblocks, we can see them as signposts, guiding us towards our true path.
And he also stressed the importance of finding joy in the journey itself, not just focusing on the destination.
So it's not about gritting your teeth and pushing through the hard stuff.
He believed that true spiritual practice should be full of joy, wonder, and gratitude. He saw beauty and divinity in everything, even in the midst of suffering. He said, "Fill the brain with high thoughts, highest ideals, place them day and night before you, and out of that will come great work."
He was a master at balancing these seemingly opposite ideas: strength and surrender, action and contemplation, joy and perseverance.
He really was. And his teachings give us a map for navigating life's complexities, with wisdom, compassion, and a deep understanding of our own inner resources.
This has been an amazing look into Swami Vivekananda's teachings. I feel like I'm starting to get a handle on the depth and complexity of his philosophy, but my brain is feeling a little overloaded right now.
I get it. His ideas are profound and multifaceted. They invite us to engage with them on multiple levels, intellectually, emotionally, and experientially.
And that's exactly what we'll do in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore some of his most profound and thought-provoking ideas about the nature of reality, consciousness, and the ultimate goal of human existence. Okay, so we've talked about a lot already, the nature of reality, social action, all that. But you said we're going even deeper in this part, tackling some of the big mysteries. I'm ready. Hit me with the brain-bending stuff.
He really wasn't afraid to go there. He explored all these questions about consciousness, the meaning of existence, even what happens after we die.
Okay, now you've really got my attention. What were some of his insights in these areas?
Well, he talked a lot about reincarnation, the idea that the soul is reborn into a new body after death. He saw this whole cycle of birth, death, and rebirth as a process of learning and evolving.
So it's not just a one-time thing. We get multiple chances to learn and grow.
That was his belief. He thought each lifetime was an opportunity to work through our karma, learn from our experiences, and move closer to liberation.
Okay, karma. Another one of those words that's a bit of a mystery. What exactly did he mean by karma?
He described it as the law of cause and effect. Every action we take, every thought we have, it creates an imprint on our soul, and that shapes our future experiences.
So it's not about being punished or rewarded. It's about the natural consequences of our choices.
Exactly. He saw karma as a neutral force, not something that's out to get you. He thought that by understanding karma, we could be more mindful of our choices and how they affect us and the people around us.
That's a powerful concept. It makes you think that we have more control over our lives than we realize. But what about those who suffer through no fault of their own? How does karma explain that?
That's a question a lot of people grapple with. And there are a bunch of different interpretations within Hinduism. Vivekananda believed that sometimes we experience the effects of actions taken in past lives.
So someone might be suffering in this life because of something they did in a past life?
That's how he understood it. But he also emphasized that we're not stuck with our past karma. We can change our course through right action, right thought, and understanding spiritual truths.
So even if we're dealing with consequences from the past, we still have a choice. We can still choose a different path.
Exactly. He was a big believer in free will and transformation.
That's reassuring, but I'm still wondering about his thoughts on what happens after we die. Did he believe in heaven and hell?
He did talk about different realms of existence, but he didn't see them as fixed places, like the classic idea of heaven and hell. He described them more as states of consciousness, temporary stops on the soul's journey.
So it's not about being rewarded or punished in the afterlife. It's about continuing to evolve and learn.
That's what he focused on. He believed the ultimate goal is liberation, freedom from the cycle of birth and death, freedom from the limitations of ego and ignorance.
Liberation sounds pretty good, but how do we get there? What's the path to this ultimate freedom?
He taught that it's all about self-realization, connecting with that Atman inside. It's a process of purifying your mind, cultivating things like compassion and detachment, and deepening your understanding of spiritual truths.
So it's not just about believing certain things or performing rituals.
He saw those as tools that could be helpful, but they weren't the end goal. The real change happens inside, a shift in consciousness.
This idea of liberation, transcending the cycle of birth and death, it's really mind-blowing. It also makes me think about the purpose of life. If we're all ultimately striving for liberation, then what's the point of being here in the first place?
That's the question, isn't it? Vivekananda saw life as a school, a place where we come to learn and grow. He said, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy by one or more or all of these and be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details.
So it's not about seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. It's about using all our experiences, both the good and the bad, as opportunities to grow spiritually.
That was his view. He believed that by living consciously, with awareness and intention, we could transform even the simplest things into chances for learning and evolving.
That's pretty radical. It's like saying even the smallest moments in our lives can have a deeper meaning.
He wanted people to see the sacred in everyday life, to recognize the divine spark in everyone they met.
This has been an incredible journey exploring Swami Vivekananda's teachings. His ideas about spirituality, consciousness, the meaning of life. They're challenging, but they're also really inspiring. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up this deep dive?
I think it's important to remember that Vivekananda wasn't just a philosopher. He was a man of action. He dedicated his life to sharing his message of love, compassion, and self-realization.
He didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, and his influence is still felt all over the world.
He showed us that real spirituality isn't about running away from the world. It's about engaging with it in a way that lifts up humanity and creates a more just and harmonious society.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for guiding us through the intricacies of Vivekananda's teachings. You've helped us understand some really profound ideas and connect them to our own lives.
It's been my pleasure. I hope this exploration has made you curious to learn more about his work and discover how powerful his message can be.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring. Read Vivekananda's writings, think about his ideas, and see how you can apply them to your own life. Remember, as Vivekananda said, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached.